All right, so where we are heading with, or where we are going with this is that we are moving into a time period known as the Neolithic Revolution, okay? Everything that we've talked about so far has basically been from like, beginnings of history up until 10,000 BCE-ish, basically before we start hitting the more important steps to get us to civilization. That's what this big first era or this big first unit is about, is basically getting us to the points of civilization. And the Neolithic Revolution is going to be the next big step to get us to that point. Okay. So the Neolithic Revolution, or as you should have seen when we were doing our definitions that we just did, is interchangeable with the term agricultural revolution. So we're going to start farming. That's where we are going with this. Okay? All right, so the Neolithic Revolution, and as we are going through this period, there are two essential questions that you will be able to answer by the end of this unit. You don't have to write these down by any means, but just two essential questions. One, why did the development of agriculture change human civilization? And two, in what ways did the agricultural revolution or the Neolithic Revolution change human way of life? So by the end of all of this, you'll be able to answer those two questions, okay? So before we get to agriculture and basically the changing of human life through the Neolithic Revolution, we have to kind of remind ourselves of where we've been. And where we've been and what that lifestyle looks like is with the hunter-gatherer life. We've talked about this very, very shortly at the very beginning of this trimester, but we're going to dive into it a little bit deeper, okay? So the key ideas of the hunter-gatherer life are where the most important steps of the hunter-gatherer life lie. Is the fact that the elderly and the ill were cared for when they could no longer provide food for themselves. This is super important, not just because it shows like continuity among a social aspect of hunter-gatherer life, but it also, that's basically it, that it shows a social aspect of the hunter-gatherer life, that we're going to continue to take care of these people when they can no longer take care of themselves. That's a huge step in social gatherings or social life, okay? Another key part of the hunter-gatherer life that is going to lead us into the Neolithic Revolution is that tools are going to start appearing, including spears, stone blades, chisels. We can even find early forms of like needles used for sewing clothing made from leather and hides, et cetera, et cetera. And the big thing of today lies within the last key idea, is that fire is also going to be an important part of this hunter-gatherer life that is going to change everything for the better leading into the Neolithic Revolution. That fire is important for hunting, defense, warmth, and controlling fire. Understanding how to make it and what to do with it is a turning point for human culture. For being so rainy today, I figured it would be colder. I am just all right, so if those are the key ideas of our hunter-gatherer life, that's the things that we're going to see throughout time, we might as well start at the beginning, okay? The birth of society and the birth of basically human nature, where we're going with all of this, is that early hunter-gatherers most likely began to work and live together in social groups over time. So we've talked about the fact that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens possibly and probably interbreeded, intermixed over time, and was part of those social groups. But even in its own species, these social groups are going to continue to grow over time. Okay. When it comes to fire and the birth of society, when it comes to these social groups, hearths or hearths, whatever you want to call them, okay, basically things to cook food, providing other, what's the word I'm looking for? Avenues of warmth, basically, or avenues of living, providing warmth, safety, and those date over 800,000 years ago. So even before when we're operating right now. Okay? These two things put together, the fact that we are living in social groups and the fact that we have hearths or these evidence of places to use for cooking, warmth, safety, suggests that early humans gathered together for food as well as comfort. If we think back to the very beginning of this trimester, we talked about the fact that the two main motivators of all early humans is food and sex. So hearths can kind of come together and create a singular place to find both. I know that sounds kind of yucky, but that's a singular place that you can go to cook food and the social comfort or the social well-being, aka sex. How was track yesterday? Do well? I had some sophomores this morning that were very upset about something. I don't know what, but Jace was bitching about something. I don't know what. I think he said he was gonna he fell or something like that. I don't know. Or that you guys came really close to doing really well and then somebody fucked up or something like that. That always happens. Same old, same old. Fair enough. At least it was nice outside. It was inside though. Oh, was it? Was it inside? Where was it at? It was in the dome. All right, looks like we're ready to move on. All right, perfect. So the birth of society and the birth of these social groups lies at the heart of this hearth, or, that kind of makes sense because it kind of looks like heart, right? The birth of society and the birth of these social groups lies at the fact that fire can come together, or you can come together around fire for a variety of different things to create this social group, okay? Where it also comes from, or where the birth of society, the birth of society will continue to grow, or we see more evidence of this, is with scientists finding and believing that they took care of these members of the group. So that brings back to the first key idea of today, okay? We see this, or the evidence that we see to provide for this, that members are taking care of each other and that it's not just a food and sex situation, is that we have evidence of people, early humans, burying their dead. The burying of the dead, or kind of like funeral service, as we like to categorize it as, is a huge step in culture, because it shows evidence of not only people taking care of each other, but also like religious service and other pieces of culture that we provide with. Graves can be found basically throughout the entire world, especially along our migration patterns. And basically the fact that groups are so important, or that we have these social groups, is because it's important for hunting. We're kind of just continually bringing it back in a circle, coming back to food and sex, but kind of also making different loops in other directions. Okay. All right. All right, so we've kind of satisfied our first key idea that we have social groups that take care of each other, that use fire as a way to come together. And we can see evidence of this not only in hunting patterns and migration patterns, but also in the fact that we bury the dead, which is a huge important piece of culture. Okay. When we're talking about hunting, and especially the hunting portion of hunting and gathering, sorry, let's make sure it was unfrozen. When we're talking about the portion of hunting when it comes to hunting gathering, we're bringing it back to our second key idea, which is about tools. Okay, early humans used hunting tools like spears and knives that they had created from rock, from basically earthly matter, as well as bones of animals that they have killed previously, other hides and leathers that they could find. Anything strong that they could basically use. Okay? These tools are really good in close range, not so good in long range. So anything that they could take down in a close range manner with these very strong tools would be good. And we are not at the point of a bow and arrow yet. We are only at kind of these handheld tools like spears, kind of like shanks, basically. Okay. We're not at bows and arrows yet. Yeah, like get a rock, make it sharp. That would also work. Throw it as hard as you can. Pocket rocks. It came back to my mind. I was like, oh, full circle. You didn't even take it with me. We had to go find stuff. We did that too. I just did balloons. I went out. Me and Trent went to the basketball court. That's where we go. Giant chunk of and Trent in their class, not this year, but last year, Zach Harold found like a 2x4 and just whoop, and he hit it and he won. Yeah, you guys did pretty well that day. I didn't be here. We don't care. We blew up the bear. This is a self promo that if you haven't taken History of Warfare, that's the kind of fun you get to enjoy with. Yeah. You should have made knives. You kind of did. Some of you made shanks with little rocks. Hey, why are you guys looking at this? All right. So with hunting tools, like I said, we're using hunting tools like spears, knives, little shanks, all of that fun stuff. Okay. And we are bringing it back full circle to fire. Okay. Fire is going to be very influential in the development of more tools. So we can eventually get to a bow and arrow age, so that we can eventually get to bigger and better technological advances. After some time, fire becomes an important hunting tool. We're not only using it to drive large animals into swamps. We're using it as kind of like a scare tactic for large animals. Bears super hard to come at with a prison shank, but if I've got fire, I can kind of put it into a cornered position. I can try and get it that way. There's a lot of different things that we can do with fire. When we can corner them like that, or the way in which the evidence suggests that they corner them and they basically leave the animals to die within the fire. I know that sounds really gruesome. It probably is. Rather me risking my life to try and stab at close range. Okay. Along with the fact that hunting is significantly impacted by fire in terms of how they can deal with large animals and how they can actually do the hunting, it of course served other purposes as they came back to their hearth, that a way to cook basically. It also provided protection from animals and other enemies of other species, other groups, et cetera, et cetera. And we're coming full circle back to the fact that fire creates social gatherings, that fires turn, raw meat into meals that turn into social gatherings. Another super important part of culture and growing culture during this time. Excuse me. All right, so we have kind of answered this question already as we are going through it, but our last big question that we need to answer today is what's so great about fire, right? Like we have continually talked about it. We talked about the fact that fire used in hearths to do all of these different things. That fire just keeps coming up, and it seems to be such an integral part of this human experience. But what's so great about fire? That's kind of what we have to answer as we are finishing this up, okay? You guys can go ahead and put away your notes, and you will just need a writing utensil for the rest of this, okay? Told you we're kind of splitting it up. We had one thing to start off with, do a little bit of notes, we'll do something else.
Yeah, how? I don't know. See if there's like bigger than like they're bigger than like they're bigger than like D1 teams. You're getting bullied on the They're soft. Yeah. Only debuted from seniors back in the
All right. So as this is going around, I know this seems like a big scary packet. I just forgot to print double-sided. My apologies, okay? What I have given you is just a little bit of background information or a little bit of perspective when it comes to answering that question, what's so great about fire, okay? Throughout this little package or this little intro, I should say, has a variety of different examples as to what fire is used for, why it's so great, and helping you answer that question. Eventually, you're going to hit the back page that has you answered the question. Fire changed life for early humans in several ways. Explain at least 3 of the changes and their results, provide details, evidence, all of that fun stuff. Basically, you are providing a claim statement for me. You're answering that question, why is fire so great? Giving me 3 examples and evidence to back it up, okay? Or 3 changes and evidence to back it up, okay? I would like to read through this together just so we all kind of get the same information and we're moving through it at the same time, and then we can move through and you can answer the question on your own, okay? So basically just follow along as I am reading, and then I will leave you on your own devices to answer that question to kind of finish us up today, okay? All right, what's so great about fire? Sometime during the lower Paleolithic era or early Stone Age, about 400,000 years ago, some brilliant woman or man discovered how to make fire. Archaeologists think this discovery may have been made in China, Southern Africa, or the Middle East. They also think that initially they used the fire may have been accidental. Before humans discovered how to light controlled fires, fires still occurred in nature. Most natural fires started when lightning struck a tree, a pile of weeds, or other dried debris, just as natural fires start today. Fire is the result of combustion, a chemical reaction between fuel and oxygen. Scientists speak of a fire triangle because a fire needs 3 things: oxygen, fuel, and heat. When fuels are heated to a high enough temperature, they release gas into the air. The fuel may already be in a form of a gas, or it may be in a solid or liquid. When heated to a high enough temperature, the molecules of the released gas join with oxygen molecules to make new molecules. This reaction is what causes the flame to ignite. A fire will burn as long as there is enough oxygen to fuel it. At some point, or at some unknown point, people realize that friction causes heat. With enough heat, one can make fire. The basic knowledge of friction led to the development of a simple tool called a fire drill. A fire drill is a long stick made of hard wood with a pointed end. The fire maker placed the fire drill against a second piece of softer wood, then twisted it. The twisting motion caused the softer wood to begin to smoke, and the fire maker could then place the dry tinder, such as leaves or small twigs, at the place where the two pieces of wood met. By carefully blowing air on this tinder, the flame ignited. Perhaps you have tried to make fire this way on a camping trip. So basically, if you've ever been in Boy Scouts, you know how this works, right? You take two things, heat it up, give something to kind of ignite the fire, make sure there's enough oxygen around, and let it burn, okay? I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. We don't really need to know more about the fire drill. In addition to using the fire drill, prehistoric people also used a second method of creating fire. This method required iron pyrite, sometimes called fool's gold, and flint. Flint is a super hard stone that will spark when it is hit by metal. When iron pyrite hits flint, it makes a spark. If the fire maker aimed that spark at a pile of dry tinder, blew on it gently, creates the fire. Okay. Keeping the fire going. Both of these methods were time consuming. They were also difficult to perform in rain, snow, and windy weather. To keep their fire, some people carried it in pottery lamps. Because the pottery lamps had sides, it protected the flame and made the fire burn longer. Matches were not developed until the 1800s. How fire changed life. Fire helped humans in at least three important ways. First, it kept people warm. Fire allowed people in cold climates to survive the freezing temperatures of winter. Second, the fire permitted people to roast meats and root vegetables such as potatoes, carrots, and turnips. This is not only made the food tastier, but also killed germs. In addition, the cooked food could be preserved longer than raw food. Third, the fire provided light. This helped humans extend the time that they could work because they could see things after sun went down. This light also helped helped keep people safe by scaring away predators. Wolves or coyotes did not come near human camps with fire because the fire would allow them to be seen. For nomadic Paleolithic era people without permanent dwellings, this was very important. Fire helped humans in other ways, but some uses of this technology were slow to develop. For example, thousands of years passed before hunters learned that if they placed the point of a wooden spear in the fire, it would harden. A harder spear tip was more likely to result in the death of an animal. The successful hunter then had meat, fur, and skins for clothing or tents, as well as bones for needles and other tools. With fire, people could bake clay in a heated kiln to make pottery. Water and food could then be stored and carried in these pottery vessels rather than in skin bags. The fired pots lasted longer, which meant food within them also lasted longer. People also learned how to construct outdoor ovens. With these ovens, people could bake grains into bread. This helped expand the human diet. I know this is giving a ton of examples, but y'all need to understand that this is happening over thousands of years. Just as though, like, we don't have a couple thousand years until they put the stick in the fire, we don't have ovens and bread for thousands of years after that as well, okay? But it's just given a couple of examples as we go through time. Even though our modern lives are filled with technology, the simple technology of fire is still important. In addition to the uses described above, fire is used today in many different fields, including construction, chemistry, power generation, etc., etc. I will let you read kind of the rest of that on your own. You kind of understand how fire works, but it gives a couple extra examples. Okay, so now would be the time. This is going to be kind of the end of what we're doing today. Answering that question. Fire changed life for early humans in several ways. Explain at least 3 of the changes and their results, and make sure to provide details and evidence support your answer. So what this would look like would be life change for early humans because, or in this way number 1, and a little bit of evidence. Way number 2, a little bit of evidence. Way number 3, a little bit of evidence. Okay. I only want your questions. So if you wanted to rip it from your packet, keep the packet and turn that into me, that would be fine. You have the rest of the period, a substantial amount of time to do so, and then we'll just kind of wait for the bell.
What do you mean?